everyone, I am Alice of KHR Arts and Cloud Orchid Publishing, and today we are going to talk about how to put real characteristics in your characters. What does this mean? Oftentimes, a lot of people will talk about how authors put themselves in the characters in their stories, or they'll base certain characters off of people in real life, whether it's family members or friends or strangers or celebrities or historical figures, whatever have you. This is what we mean by real characteristics put into your characters. It's taking existing characterizations in existing humans that we know and putting them into our stories. Now, you can take this as literally or as figuratively as you want. And what this means is that some authors choose to basically create a Mary Sue style thing where the main character is them and they've simply slapped a different name onto their character, but for all intents and purposes, that character is them. Or a character in the story is their mom or their best friend in real life, and they just slap a different name on the character, and for all intents and purposes, everything about that character is that real life person. I personally don't recommend doing that because, one, it can complicate relationships, and two, there can be legal repercussions with that. So if you don't have somebody's permission to write them into your book and they figure out that that character is them, especially if you've painted them in a less than good light, they can sue you for defamation of character. Now, how successful they will be in winning that case is up for debate, but there have been instances of people doing that. So if you want to save yourself the heartache, I would recommend not just taking real life people and slapping a different name on them and then shoving them into your story. However, it is a good practice to take different characterizations of existing humans and putting them into your characters in your books. For instance, my novel, Love of the Sea, one of the characters, her name is Pamela. She is the cook who basically treats the Prince Cormac like her own son. She's very motherly, she's very loving, she's very supportive, but she's also kind of sassy. She's very fun. I had so much fun writing that particular character. And a big part of why I really love Pamela is because there are characterizations in her from my nanny, my grandma, and my mentor and my former college professor, Tina Jens. I took some qualities of those two women that I love dearly and I put them into this character, Pamela. Pamela is not just shoving my grandma in the story and is not just shoving Tina Jens in the story as this pretend character. I took different qualities of these two people that do have quite a bit of overlap in them in order to create this very nurturing, supportive, motherly figure in that story. So I took those aspects of these two women that I admire so greatly and have so much love for in order to create that character. So I took their strength, I took Tina Jen's sassiness, I took my grandma's just motherly love and how she loved to cook for me as a form of love as well. Pamela does that. She cooks for Cormac. She bakes these oat cakes and makes sure he's always fed, that when he goes on adventures on his boat, that he always has a basket of food at hand, all that kind of stuff. That's characterization from my grandma. And also the strength that both of these women have, in that their strength comes from their lovingness and their gentleness and how much they care about and support others, rather than the idea of this, like, brute strength or violent strength or valiant strength or any, all of the stereotypical ideas of strength that we think of. I wanted it to be that strength in terms of love and support and emotional support, and that softer sort of strength that these two women in my life definitely embody, and I wanted to put that in Pamela in order to make her a very strong woman in this story. So those are examples of how you can take these characterizations from different people in real life and put them into your characters in your story. And those sorts of things are totally okay to do. And some people will be flattered if you pull things that they're like, oh, this character reminds me of me. Did you write this character about me? Sort of thing. Others might not be so flattered, but as long as you're not, just scraping serial numbers off of things and slapping on a new name, you're probably not going to get in as much trouble. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, how much of these real life people should I put into these characters, and how much should be that of my own creation? What exactly is the balance that I want to strike here? And unfortunately, there is no definitive answer for that. That is something that you have to essentially measure with your own heart. You have to decide what you feel is the best balance for those particular characters and the particular traits that you want to give them. I will say that you do want to make sure that you're not relying too heavily on real life people as inspiration for your characters, that good characterization comes from a writer's ability to create these unique characters in these unique spaces. So being able to make them of your own creation rather than simply Frankensteining different pieces, parts from people you know, is going to help your writing grow and just overall create more realistic and relatable characters. But it is good to add characteristics from people IRL because those are real life examples that you have of different kinds of people that you can draw on for inspiration. For instance, maybe you have someone in your life has had a struggle with some really raw IRL issue, whether it's some sort of addiction, or maybe they got divorced, or maybe they lost someone in their life, whether it's a friend or a family member, or maybe they just had something really traumatic happen to them. And you want to write a character that had some sort of trauma like that, but you yourself as the writer have not experience that kind of trauma in your life. It's a good idea to take certain characteristics about that person that you know in order to help you to create that character that is going to experience some sort of trauma or already has experienced some sort of trauma and is working through it in your story. That is one of the best ways to create genuine characters, is if something about your character is something that you personally have not experienced, it's good to draw upon people you know that have experienced that thing and think about, what are the struggles that they dealt with? What are the things that they did to help them overcome that? Or conversely, maybe what are the things that they did that were entirely unhelpful in their journey and dragged them down? What are some of the mannerisms that they have now because of that? Maybe because of the stress, they have an eye twitch now. Maybe because of PTSD, they get freaked out when people come up behind them that they can't see. Or maybe certain noises or loud voices scare them. Or maybe there's certain areas or parts of town or buildings that they can no longer visit because of the experience that they've had. Putting those sorts of details into your character makes them more relatable and more realistic. And while yes, you're drawing inspiration from this real life person, absolutely do not model this character beat by beat by this person. Absolutely make sure that you are adding in things of your own creation, that maybe go do research about other people that have had similar or the same sort of experiences and see what kinds of differences they've had as opposed to this IRL person, just in order to mix things up and make sure that you're not writing a story that's essentially about someone else that's kind of not really your business to tell, because again, that can really hurt some relationships and hurt people in the process. So again, make sure you're being sensitive with creating these characterizations and make sure you're adding in enough of your own creation in order to make it your creation. Otherwise, it's not your creation and it's really not your story anymore. In the positive sense, so for instance, my book, Freya's Baby, is about Freya is a teenager who gets pregnant and she's going to keep the baby and she's going to have the baby. I myself have never been pregnant. I have never had a child. Do not desire for either of those things to happen to me. So I personally do not have any experience with that particular experience. However, obviously my mom had that experience because I exist. Here I am, duh. But also, I was 7 years old when my mom had my brother, so I was old enough that I remember a lot of her being pregnant and her giving birth and my brother being a baby. I remember a lot of that, as well as a lot of my other relatives have also had children, and I was old enough to be around for those journeys that they had, and I remember a lot of things about them being pregnant, about them giving birth. I actually went to a lot of births growing up as a kid. I waited in a lot of hospital waiting rooms bathrooms for a lot of relatives to give birth to babies. So I was there, I remember. And also experiencing, meeting those babies and spending time with them. Like, I had all those experiences, they were just not directly. So I utilized those experiences in order to write that story. But I did not base Freya or her experience on any one of those people in my life. I took, a little bit from column A, a little bit from column B, and then on top of it, the fact that she's a teenager. And I don't have any personal connections with anybody who went through a teenage pregnancy. So that was something that I also had to do my own research on to be authentic with in order to create this full characterization. So this is what I mean by creating those characterizations with real life people, but also making sure that you're creating enough of it yourself that it's not just a carbon copy of a real person stuck into the pages of your story. And drawing on those experiences, I was able to learn a lot, and I was able to craft it so that Freya seems like a real person and her experience seems real and she's relatable and all of that. That's how you do all of that. And again, as I said, it can be the broad experience of this case, pregnancy and having a baby, or it can be something as intimate as what were some of the pregnancy cravings that they had? What were some of the challenges they had with particular body parts that gained more weight than others, or particular difficulties that they had with certain body parts aching or hurting or being tired, or just different difficulties with the process of having to deal with doctors and having to deal with people's reactions and going about their daily life with this new weight and sometimes burden attached to them depending on what they're trying to accomplish. And it can also be particular mannerisms that they developed, that the putting their hand over their belly, resting it there, protecting it, or making sure they give a wide berth to table corners, just all those kind of details are things that you can glean from real life people, but still make sure that you're putting enough in there that's of your own creation. All of this also is entirely helpful in making sure that your characters are not cardboard cutouts, that they're not stereotypes, that they're not Mary Sues, that they seem like real people on the page, is by injecting these real life experiences and these real characterizations from people will help flesh out your character to be a real person. And that's a big part of writing that I have seen people neglect, is that they depend more on the story itself rather than the characters. And I myself am guilty of that as well. We all are. And taking that time to really observe people and observe different experiences, and taking the time to learn about different kinds of people and learn about different kinds of experiences are really going to help you grow your characters and grow your writing in order to be able to craft those kind of characterizations yourself. As I've said in some of my other videos, and as I've said in interviews in the past, working as a model and touring around the States has really helped me with that, in that I, over the years, met tons of different kinds of people from different backgrounds and cultures and religions and points of view. I've met people who grew up in teeny tiny hometowns and have never left, like they have never gone out and experienced the world. Their entire universe is this teeny tiny town, and that's all they know and all they'll ever know. I've met people that are absolute global citizens, where they've been literally everywhere and know so much about all these different countries and peoples and places and just everything in between. I've met all sorts of people. And in talking with these real life people and learning about them and learning about their journeys, it has really helped to shape me as a writer, that I have all those different people to draw on for inspiration. That, I'm not a car mechanic, I don't know anything about cars, but so-and-so that I met that's a big gearhead and loves cars and builds vintage cars for a living and things like that, I can draw on my experiences that I had learning about that person in order to build better characteristics for potentially making a car mechanic character, or maybe they're a car enthusiast, or maybe they're a racer, or insert whatever here. Using your real life experiences and the connections that you have made with other real life people are going to help you as an author. And again, we have to fight that stereotype of that authors are just these gremlins that just live by themselves in like cabins by the lake, or like shut ourselves away in a closet, never interact with anybody. You do have to go out and people. I'm sorry. I know many of you are screaming at this point, how dare I tell you that you have to go out and people, but you gotta go out and people. Sorry. In order to create better characters for your stories, you got to go out and people and meet people. It's really going to help your writing, and it's really going to help your characters be more realistic. So I hope this video was helpful. I hope y'all enjoyed it. If you liked this video, please be sure to give it a like. And if you're new, subscribe. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.